Hello, everyone. Welcome to my holistic expert interviews today. I am super excited to have my guest, Angie Christensen, join us today and to share with you some of the knowledge and experience that she has. I just can't wait to introduce her to you and to share some really key points today that I think you will find really valuable. So Angie is the founder and creator of Simply Divine Eating, and she has, through intense experiences of her own and overcoming her own health challenges, and as we'll talk about later in the program, with her children as well, she's taken those experiences and melded them with her studies of chemistry and science in school, and then just her own personal study, and really found ways to customize and really refine the art of holistic eating for your individual unique body type and health challenges, and has really triumphed over those challenges using those methods. And as you guys know, I am all about that. I'm all about eating for your unique body type and your bio-individuality, and I believe in the power of food, at the very least, just to set that foundation for healing. Because when we have those building blocks that our body needs, then our body is able to do what it does best and heal and repair itself and come into balance. So welcome today, Angie. Hello, how are you?
Great, thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. Thanks you for being on today. So tell us a little bit about what you were struggling with, and was it the early 2000s or so?
Yeah, for me, it really started when I was a teenager. As a teenager, I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia, and I was on 3 different medications for that every day for over a decade. And then I had other things I was struggling. I had irritable bowel syndrome as a teenager as well, and anxiety and depression. And then the one that really motivated me to make some changes was I had really highly aggressive endometriosis, and had 6 surgeries within 5 years for that, and some really aggressive medical treatments that they did. And yet I wasn't getting any better. Every surgery, things were just getting worse and worse and worse. And I kind of hit that point where I realized, if I do not turn this around, I am not going to survive. And so despite the fact that all I'd ever known my whole life was conventional modern medicine, that motivated me to start looking. And I dove right into holistic health and healing for the answers I hadn't been able to find. And I've never looked back. That's just become my life after that. And then we've adopted 2 special needs children and are in the process of adopting our 3rd. And so my own health challenges really set the foundation of then what I needed to continue to learn and help with my kids. So
that is so amazing. Looking back, when you were on your holistic health journey, was there a pivotal mentor or book or naturopathic doctor, or who was it that really helped you kind of open that door to that world for you?
There was a book on healing from endometriosis through nutrition. That was, I think, if you want to pick that one thing that started to open my eyes and help me look elsewhere, that I read, and really, it really did start to open my eyes about how key nutrition, which, now it's 20 years later and nobody debates that anymore. That's, we all know that, but doing it is another matter. And but yeah, that was the pivotal, I think, change of perspective for me.
Yes, indeed. And as you delved deeper into this, did you start to get a little bit confused by all of the different diets out there and the different expert voices?
Yeah. And honestly, it's that is why I do what I do, because what I find is, when I talk to people, I never have anyone who comes up to me and says, I really want to be sicker. Like, can you help me do that? It doesn't exist. There's no one I know who doesn't want to be healthier. And most people are honestly trying. It's just we are given so much bad information, and then we're given so much conflicting information. And so to me, the word healthy doesn't mean anything anymore. When you talk about healthy eating, people now have to start clarifying, well, what do you mean? Do you mean, whole food? Do you mean keto? Do you mean vegetarian? Do you mean, right? Because the word healthy doesn't mean anything anymore. And so that actually was, I think, the key goal for me in my own health journey is I very quickly started improving, and it only took me about a year to get off all my medications, and I haven't had another surgery now in 17 years. And so I started seeing results in myself quickly enough to know I was on the right track. But there was that confusion that everyone I knew was dealing with. And so that's actually what I set out to find was what are the truths that are at the bottom of all of this chaos? And how can we then hone in on things that we can know are absolutely true, and then take those and individualize those principles in our own lives? And that's what my business, Simply Divine Eating, is built on, is helping people do that.
Yes, and I love that. That's beautiful. So you started on whatever principles were in that Eating for Endometriosis book, and that got you to a certain level, and then
and then I just kept building and learning and growing from there. So for me, I think my healing was a lot slower than it can be for people, because I was totally solo. I didn't have anyone helping me. I was totally self-taught during that journey, really. And so I did make a lot of mistakes, and it took me a long time to learn some things, but even doing it the slow way, I have no regrets, because like I say, when you start in the right direction, your body responds. Do you know what I mean? And you can start to feel that it goes, oh, hey, wait a minute, this is better, and once you experience that, even in a small degree, then you are self-motivated to continue on the path.
Yes. So give me some examples of some of those underlying principles that you found.
So I actually have, that's the core class of my program. It's called the 4 Cornerstones, and there's 4 principles I found, and I'm really not trying to be difficult, but it takes me about an hour to explain it, so it all it all fits together. But if you have listeners who would be interested in that, I do have that recorded on a YouTube video from a presentation I did that I could share the link with if
nice.
you like that.
We'll do that. Yeah,
sure. That people could watch. But I think really the key thing for me was realizing that it is this issue of harmony. Like, our bodies have a way they're designed to work, and they're designed to work, right? They're not designed to be in the malfunction degree that we're living in. It's not that we're trying to live forever or never be sick, but the degree of malfunction we're living in is really unprecedented. And so when you start to look at the fact that, and really start to believe, I think that was a shift for me, that the human body is designed to function, and it knows how to do it, and it knows how to heal. And if it's not, what's it missing, right? Like what are we doing that is keeping the body out of harmony? And as we start to figure out what those things are and bring the body back into harmony, then it does the healing. That isn't something you have to train your body to do. Like it knows how to do that. What we have to do is make sure that the body's being able to live in harmony with its divine function and how it's designed to. And then it takes care of the healing for us. And I think that's such a shift from at least how I used to think of, well, if the body's not working, then we put this medication in to force this function to change, right? Or we cut this part out, or it's like this approach of force of trying to change the body's function. Whereas what I learned as I came into the world of holistic health is, no, we support the body in its natural function, and then it takes care of the problems by itself. And so when I was starting to change what I started with what I ate. That's what I started with when I was trying to heal. It's like, as I started to understand how my body worked and started to change how I eat to just support that normal function, I didn't necessarily do anything specific to try to fix fibromyalgia, right? Or to try to fix endometriosis. That wasn't it. It was just this process of helping my body to try to be in harmony with itself. And then symptoms just start to gradually do this. Do you know what I mean? And all of a sudden you can take out this medication, and then you can take out this one, and then you don't need this anymore because the body is just shifting into a more harmonic function of how it was designed to
from
be.
maybe eating a standard American diet with a lot of refined flours and sugars and
Oh yeah. I was eating a total
bad oils and
all of the above. I was doing all of the above. You know, I was eating the way the government tells us to eat, right? That food pyramid thing that does not, I mean, it's more than scientifically proven, does not work. And so that's where I was. You know, there was way too much sugar. There was way too much refined stuff. There were the wrong fats, all of those things. Not enough of the good nutrients. And so all of those were things I had to shift just one at a time. You know, healing my gut. If I have to say what the one key component it was working on healing my gut, because your immune system.
Endometriosis had decimated, right?
Well, yeah, I'd had a colon resection for one, but beyond that, the most life-changing fact I learned in my process was that your immune system is controlled in your gut. Your immune cells are literally made in your gut. And so for someone like me that was suffering from all of these things that were earmarks of a malfunctioning immune system, right? The key was working on my gut. And when I started to shift that, like that changed more things faster than any other thing I've ever learned in my entire life, really.
Yes, absolutely. I love how that information has really come to the forefront.
Finally.
I know, right? I think it's really not only gut, but, you know, it was kind of like gut and immune system was the last 5 years or so. And now we're starting to recognize gut and the brain and the health of the brain. And I'm loving that we're moving there.
Yep. Yeah. Well. That enteric, and that's been more the key for, you know, my oldest son, is that connection between the gut and the enteric nervous system and the brain. And so, yeah, it's when you really understand your gut and how it works, you have the power to live and eat in a way that supports that. And then your body function really does change. It really does.
Yeah. Tell us more about your son, what he struggled with in your journey and helping him.
So my oldest was diagnosed on the autistic spectrum. Lots of gut issues from the day we adopted him. That was a problem that already existed. And then obviously then there were more injuries that happened on top of that, the vaccine injuries that happened with him. That was a very dramatic, it's not, you can't really debate it with him. Literally his hair fell out after. So, I mean, it was pretty obvious. But, you know, trying to work and help him with that. And really for him, food gives us a different life. And it's hard for people to understand that until you've literally seen it. But, you know, there are some videos out there where parents have videotaped their child where before and after eating one food and the behavior going. But like, I mean, that's the kind of thing that we experience. And these kids that are on the autistic spectrum, the ADHD, the whatever, you know, I really feel after working with my kids and other kids, whatever, that one of the characteristics of these kids is they're simply more sensitive. And that has its pros and its cons. I mean, it is a good thing. I think they have capacities that are amazing because of that sensitivity, but it means they're highly sensitive to the things in this world around them, and they're highly sensitive to the food that we put in them. And with those kids, if you have got a kid with behavior problems, the very first thing I would suggest is looking at the food, because I literally have, and I'm not the only one, I have 2 different children based on what he eats. I have a child that is manageable, and it's not that we still don't have our challenges, but manageable, kind, gentle, sweet. And then I have a child that is so violent that if I did not control the food and he ate a typical standard American diet every day, he would have been institutionalized probably around age 4 because it would not have been safe in our home. And that's the same child, and the only difference is food. It really is that pronounced. And in some kids, it's a lot more subtle than that. Some kids, you've got a 3-day delay before you see those things happen. And so it's harder for parents to catch the connection. But I remember I was teaching a group of parents on diet things for special needs kids. And one of the moms came up to me and she's like, I don't think I can do this. Like, life is so hard already. How am I going to put more effort into food? Like, because I'm barely holding it together as it is. And I said, just try it for 2 weeks. Do this for 2 weeks. And 2 weeks, you will know if it's worth your effort. And if it's not, then bag it. But I said,
life is going to be so much simpler once you do these.
And I ran into her about 6 months later in a store. And she looked at me and she said, I will never go back. Because it's true, it is so much easier to put the work into food and have a calm child than manage an out of control child all the time.
Exactly,
and,
true words.
It is. And so you've got to get past that initial, it is hard to make the switch. And kids often get worse for a week or two before they get better because their bodies have got to detox. But when you, it's like discovering your real child. That's how I feel. It's like the child I see, the child I live with, when he's had those foods, that is not him. Like, it is not him. That is not his personality. That is not how he wants to live. It is as miserable for him as it is for me, because he doesn't want to be angry and violent. That is not his personality. And yet when the food is where it needs to be so that his body isn't stressed out and isn't freaking out, that's who he is. It's like I get to meet my real child. And I feel so sad for all of these children and parents out there that I feel like have never met their real child. That makes me want to cry. And the kids have never met their real selves because their bodies are so stressed out all of the time by this junk that's coming in that they never have a chance to calm down and find out who they are. And that's such a sad thing when the solution, I'm not going to say it's easy, but it is simple. Like, it's not a complicated thing. It takes there's a little bit of a learning curve, but it really is such a simple solution. And I don't know a single parent of special needs kids who hasn't experienced fairly dramatic results from controlling the food. Like I say, these kids are just so sensitive that it's like when you can take that stress off of them, it doesn't mean everything's instantly cured overnight. But oh my gosh, life gets so much easier.
I heard someone describe it in a way that I loved, and that was, he said, if you take your individual capacity to handle toxins from the environment or compounds in food, a normal person's capacity would be a 5-gallon bucket. And these kids with special needs, their capacity is the size of a thimble in comparison. And I just love that analogy because it really does help foods, maybe red number 5 doesn't show up immediately on a normal person, and yet it can absolutely cause someone else with a thimble size capacity to absolutely go crazy.
Yeah. And it isn't, I think it's, it's helpful too when you learn the science side of this, that this isn't these kids being difficult, and it's not these kids not rolling with things. When you start to learn that the biochemistry of how a methylation cycle works,
right.
And these kids' methylation cycles do not work. Like, they don't work. And so it's like every toxin that goes in stays.
And just so you know, you guys, the methylation cycle is a very key part of your detoxification ability and your glutathione and your antioxidants and that.
Yeah. And we've got a lot of people where, over time with environmental threats and all this, those have degraded and they don't work the way they were intended to work. And so, and I think this problem existed before too, but if you didn't have a toxic world, it didn't really matter, right? If your methylation cycle didn't work quite right before, it didn't really matter. Now all of a sudden it's a really big deal. And so we're seeing so many stressed out bodies because of it. But it is something you can manage. You just have to recognize that's going on, and then recognize that your life is really easier if you manage that instead of letting it manage your life.
Yeah. Can you give our audience some examples of foods that create those craziness?
Yeah. So, I mean, the first things we took out with my son, well, okay, so I did, when he was between the ages of 6 months and about 18 months, I started doing an elimination diet and testing. And the good thing about my own health problems in the past were it had given me enough of a foundation to know how to do that, because I'd had to do it with me. And we did an elimination diet. And then we actually ended up doing electrodermal testing, which if someone doesn't want to go through the hassle of an elimination diet, I highly recommend, because the child holds an electrode in their hand while they measure it against, on a computer, their body's literal electrical response to different foods. And so you can watch it on the computer screen. Milk, you know, and the electrical current just goes crazy. And so when we did the electrodermal testing, it matched every single thing I had found on elimination testing, and we had 30 foods we had to take out at first. We now have only 2 real foods that we still need to avoid with him as he's worked on healing. However, there are many, many things, and those are gluten and dairy, which are common for special needs kids. We have goats now, and he does fine on the goat milk, but traditional dairy we've had to take out. But these kids, they don't deal well with anything that's not real. Nobody does, to be honest. It hurts any human body. But the effects are so much pronounced on these kids, and in a way that's a gift, because the rest of us, people who don't have those acute reactions, we do a lot of damage blindly. And I think one of the gifts of these kids is it's helping us start to become aware of what all of us are doing to ourselves, because it's like my child's a magnifying glass. And it's not just with food. Media, like he reacts in a magnified way to media. He reacts. And so it's like having this little meter in our home all the time of what is good and what is not, because everything is, all the reactions are exaggerated on him. And in a way that can become a real blessing to you, because you become so much more conscious. And food's only one of the ways that shows up. But with him, anything synthetic, any dyes, any preservatives, any of those MSG, any of those things that are synthetic are an issue.
Food made in a lab.
Yeah, if God didn't make it, it doesn't belong in your body. It really is that simple. So you know, but on him the effects are dramatic, and so it has helped us to clean things up even more than I had with myself.
Right, that's fascinating. So I know a lot of kids, sometimes they even react to healthy foods, you know, like foods high in oxalates or fermented foods with the amines or anything like that. Did he go through a phase where he
has not struggled with the histamines, but we have had to do a low oxalate diet. We did that for a lot of years, and we still eat probably midway on oxalates. So that, and I will be honest, the oxalate one is the hardest of anything I've had to do.
You're talking about almonds and avocados and greens. So many of those really healthy, nutrient-dense foods are also high in oxalates.
Yeah,
so.
And processed foods are lower in oxalates, and so
right. I know.
You know, so yeah, so that's the most challenging, but there again, pretty dramatic reactions, and so
yeah. Can you give us an example of a reaction to oxalates?
Well, okay, so for those who don't know what an oxalate is a normal occurring thing in some foods that we are supposed to have a specific bacteria, Oxalobacter, in our guts that breaks down oxalate. It's considered an anti-nutrient, meaning it's naturally occurring, but it's harmful to the human body. But we've killed off that bacteria with antibiotics, and it's one of the ones that they found is one of the hardest to ever get back once you kill it off. It does not repopulate as an adult. It's one we get at the age of around 6 from eating dirt, is where it comes from. It's a really important thing. But anyway, so, and then some people actually their bodies spontaneously produce oxalates as well. So, but what happens is if you don't have the bacteria to break it down and all of that, they build up as crystals in the body and they cause pain. The most common thing being a kidney stone. Anyone with kidney stones has oxalate toxicity, but they can also go to the brain. And so with my son, what we notice is behavior changes, just a lot of aggression and things. But the way when I first found out about oxalates, what they suggest you do is just reduce the oxalates in your diet and watch what happens, right? To see if it's an issue, because there's not really a test for it that's accurate. And oh my gosh, the instant we reduced them in our diet, my kids were in the bathroom literally every 15 minutes. And we started having accidents at night because your body starts purging it. As soon as it's not going in, your body starts, you do what they call oxalate dumping. And it became really obvious really fast that we had an issue, because it was coming out like crazy. That was the very first thing we noticed. And then once we started getting that out, then if there was more oxalates going in, we would notice the behavior changes. So, but like anything, if the symptoms are chronic, you're not going to see the connection. And so you have to get whatever is the insult out of your life for a little while so that the body isn't reacting in a chronic way. And then when it comes in, you can test it again, and then it's so obvious. But you have to get rid of the chronic symptoms first. And then when you try something
all the coping
again,
mechanisms have to clear out of the way.
yeah.
Right.
And then it's so obvious when you try it again. It's so obvious. Yeah.
So true. Thank you for that real life example. I just love to have, it means so much when you've got a child and you have that real life experience.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about some of the holiday classes that you've been teaching. I hear you have a secret power of making holiday goodies be somewhat healthy. Do you want to tell us about that?
That's kind of my hobby, is how do you take something that's unhealthy and turn it into something healthy? Like someone tells me I can't, and I'm like, yes, I can. I know. Like a challenge. Anyway, but yeah, one of the things I've found is emotionally with food is that in our society, we're taught to treat ourselves, right? That's the word I use. We're taught to treat ourselves when we've done something good and when we've had a rotten day or something bad has happened, right? We use it as consolation. So both when something good happens or something hard happens, we want to treat ourselves. And the really, really sad thing I've realized is that we are programmed from childhood that means to eat something that we know is bad for us.
Interesting.
Stop and think about it for a minute. We don't consider it a treat unless we know it's bad for us. Think about how twisted that is. That we reward ourselves with self-sabotage and we comfort ourselves with self-sabotage. That's literally what we've been programmed to do since we were handed a sucker at the doctor's office, right? Like our whole lives, we've been programmed to do that. The doctor knows that's bad for you, and yet that's how he consoles you. It's a really, really twisted thing in our culture. And so what I work really hard to help people realize is when most of us try to take out the sugar, right? We're going to go on a sugar cleanse, or we're going to do all of these things to try to get healthier. We don't address that emotional issue that we need to treat ourselves. It isn't treating ourselves that's a bad thing. It's what we've been taught to treat ourselves with. And so I help people to replace that in a positive way, because food is meant to be a part of celebration. It's meant to be a part of joy. It's meant to be a part of family. It's not really food that's the problem. It's our programming around food. And so, yeah, so I have a whole holiday series of classes where we take everything from Halloween to Thanksgiving to Christmas, and we do what I call editing it, where we take those recipes and we show you how you can make them over so that, like we talked about with harmony, they're now in harmony with the human body. And so you can eat pie and you don't have that feeling afterwards. You feel good, and you can make chocolates for Christmas, and we do all this Harry Potter stuff for Halloween with butterbeer and all this fun stuff, because all you have to do is get those foods back in harmony with the principles of how the human body works, and then you can treat yourself over the holidays and not get to January being sick, right? Like we talked about how your immune system's in your gut. We kill our guts from October to December, and then we wonder why January is the flu season.
Right, because the sugar,
Really?
it inhibits our immune system, and then it feeds the bad bacteria. So,
And everything in your entire immune system goes haywire. But to me, the key is you don't have to pick between, okay, so I don't want to sabotage my immune system, so I'm just going to suffer through the holidays and never eat anything yummy. Like, you don't have to do that. All you have to do is learn how to edit your favorite recipes so that they're back in harmony. And then you can have the joy and the celebration and all the good stuff and all the yummy food and not get sick and not feel terrible. It's such a wonderful thing to really bring food back to where it's supposed to be.
yes. And do you find that it's easier to eat healthy treats in moderation than
Absolutely.
the other ones?
You know, your body is designed to get nutrition, right? It needs nutrition to live. So that is one of your core drives in your body. And when we eat food that has no nutrition, our body goes, that wasn't it. Feed me more.
Right, exactly.
Feed me more. It's in its defensive mode of that did not help me, so give me more. And it's like when you put in real food that actually gives your body what it needs, it's like, I'm good. I'm good.
Like when I eat a real dark chocolate bar, right?
You can't eat a bar.
Right. Well,
you can't eat a bar of that.
Right. No, right. No,
Yeah.
absolutely. It satisfies very quickly.
It does. And I think that's another thing most people in the American culture have actually never noticed, and that is that most treats never satisfy. You never get to that happy feeling. You go all the way from, that wasn't enough, I need more, I need more, I need more, to I'm sick. And there actually never is a satisfied, happy place in that treat. We just that drive to eat more and more and more ends when we get sick. And it's like when you eat a healthy treat, you don't have that drive to eat more and more, and you don't get sick, and you actually get to experience eating food and feeling happy about it. Which really a lot of us have never felt. We've never felt that, right? Like to actually eat something and go, that was delicious and I loved it and I feel good. Like if you've never felt that, you want to. It's a good thing. It really is.
I love that. That's beautiful. That's how I like to live. I mean, yeah. I love to eat good food and not feel guilty about it and not feel sick after. And that's just, why make it into a battle? Make it into this topsy-turvy where you eat and then you feel crappy and then you feel guilty and then you have this big cycle.
Yep.
Yes, indeed. So Angie, I know you do some retreats as well where you do 3-day cooking classes and things like that. Do you have any of those coming up next year?
Because of our upcoming adoption, I'm not doing a retreat.
For you. Taking some time off.
I'll need to be at home with our little girl this year. But yeah, I do. Most years I do at least one where we go up to Bear Lake and that's what we do. We show you how to edit all these recipes and make them family friendly and yummy, but healthy. This last one, we did all Asian food from all the different Asian countries and did remakes of all of those famous Chinese takeout and, all those things that we love and how to make them over so that they're healthy. And it's also just so nice to be with other people who want to. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes trying to live this way feels very isolating and you can feel very alone. And a nice thing about a retreat is to spend those days with all other people who are just as passionate about this as you are. And that's a really fun aspect of it. So yeah, I don't have any of those this year, but they'll come back.
Right. That's okay. I love that you are creating the space that you need to honor this new child that's coming into your life and yourself. And it sounds like she will need all the loving that she can get.
Yes.
That's really wonderful. So I hear you're going to share some of those sweet makeover tips with us, with our listeners today. Is that true?
Yeah, and if they want to sign up for the newsletter on my website, Simply Divine Eating, you get like 4 or 5 recipes There's a fudge, there's a healthy fudge, there's a chocolate cake and chocolate frosting, a lemon cake, just to let you see that you can have all of those recipes and have that delicious food and feel good at the same time. So yeah, if they want some free recipes to try,
go to simplydivineeating.com.
simplydivineeating.com and just sign up for the newsletter, and they'll get a bunch of those that they can try out. I'm trying to think how we would do this. Do you have a way to attach a link when you share this video or anything?
Yeah.
I can also send you, if you want, I have a holidays chocolates class that has all the videos and the recipes on how to make homemade healthy chocolates with your family. I could send you that link.
Oh, perfect. Okay, you guys, we will attach that when you watch this. Look down below the video and there'll be a link to that chocolate class.
Because that's fun, because you do want during the holidays those family bonding experiences, right? Of getting into the kitchen together and making things you don't normally eat. That's the point of the holidays, but to do it in a way that's going to support your body instead of sabotaging it really takes it to a whole new level.
Right, I agree. So that kind of reminds me of the 80-20 rule. I can just hear some of our listeners thinking, well, if I eat healthy most of the time, then why can't I just eat regular candy in the holidays? And doesn't that just fit into the 80-20? And I've also heard people say, well, if you eat healthy 80% of the time, you might not get 100% of the benefits, but you'll get 80% of the benefits. Can you speak to that? Do you think it is kind of a one-to-one relationship like
that? Well, I'll say this. So one of the favorite phrases that gets into this whole thing is moderation in all things. And I challenge you to find where that comes from, because I've looked. And it does not come from scripture. It does not come from philosophy. It does not come from anywhere that I can find. And the interesting thing is, if you look at that phrase and really look at it, none of us believe that. No one believes in a moderation of all things. Do you want a moderation of violence in your neighborhood? Do you want a moderation of toxicity in your drinking water? Do you want a moderation of love in your home? That is just not a philosophical truth, moderation in all things. We want an abundance of good things, and we want a minimal amount of things that hurt us. Moderation in all things is not true from any philosophical viewpoint. It just isn't. And so we use that phrase. It's been invented to create this impression that there's a degree of harm that isn't harmful. And there again, that is not truth. I think one of the most important things that I learned in my, real chemistry studying of nutrition is that if there is something that's harmful to the human body, there is no degree that it does not harm the human body. The more you have of it, the worse it's going to get. But it's not like there's this safe zone of a lot of these things where it's like, if you have this, no harm happens, and then all of a sudden, there is no food that I know of that's bad for you that if you only eat 20% of it, there's no effect. And then some magically after 20%, it has a negative effect. That chemistry doesn't work that way. If a food has a negative effect in your body, it has a negative effect in your body every single time. And so for me, I need to not think of food in an 80-20 way, because I don't want to be harming my body on purpose 20% of the time. What I believe is that in life, imperfection is a real thing. So none of us are perfect at our choices. We live in a world where none of our food is perfect, really. And so those detox systems that we have, their purpose is for accidental exposure. That's their purpose. And they can handle that much. When we slip up or when we get food that isn't perfect, or, those detox systems are meant for that. They are not meant for 20% of deliberate sabotage. The human body is literally biochemically not set up that way. And so my intent is to find ways to have food I love that is 100% supportive to my body. I want it to be food I love. I'm not trying to eat 80% of food I don't like that's good for me and 20% of food I like that's bad for me. I'm trying to eat 100% of food I like that's good for me. Like
I
that's
love
my
that.
goal.
Yes, I love that.
And that's why so much of what I do is helping people take food they already love and make it match their body, because the goal isn't to like hate what we eat most of the time and then sabotage ourselves with bad food we love. Just flip it or totally change the paradigm and just eat food you love that's good for you. And then you don't why do you need an 80-20 rule if the food that's good for you is food you love?
That's beautiful. Beautiful. Oh, I'm so glad I asked that question. I thought it brought out some really important principles and different ways of thinking than I'm seeing right now. So I love that. Well, thank you, Angie. I so appreciate you being with us and such valuable insights you've shared today.
You're welcome.
I'm excited to share these links. You guys, you really need to check out her website. She's got some wonderful resources there. And I love doing food makeovers. It's definitely easier than you might think it is. And half the times your family doesn't even notice that that dish that you make every single week suddenly got a huge boost in nutrition power.
Okay. And one other thing, if I can share,
yes, please.
If you would like some emotional support in that transition, because sometimes doing it alone is hard, I do have a sugar makeover class coming up in January.
Oh, fun.
For 6 weeks. There again, the goal is not deprivation. It's not removal. It's a makeover. It's to help you learn how to make over the foods you love, how to make over how you think about foods and how you treat yourself. And we're going to do that as a whole 6-week group thing so that you've got all the support. So if you're interested in that, that's on my website as well. What?
Well, is that an online class or a local class?
It's live but online. So we meet every once a week for a live class, but it's also recorded so that you can do it from your home, but you've got that live interaction and support
and it is available online anywhere you live.
Yep.
Great. That sounds wonderful. All right. Thank you, Angie.
You are welcome. Thank you for inviting me, and happy holidays, everyone.
Yes. Merry Christmas.